Alright, first I want to just do a quick lesson here that kind of introduces Microsoft Access. I have a special piece of software called Adobe Acrobat that's installed, so I've got this menu bar. You guys want to start with this. This is the beginning Access toolbar. You'll notice there are a couple of elements to it. One of the important things, I've had a couple other databases that are open. These are the two example databases that are available for our use. They also have some templates that you can create. Down here are some things that you can go and get. They're also organized categories, so if you need to, you can make a couple of these from scratch. Now, we're not going to be using any of those. What we'll be doing is actually creating from scratch. But I wanted to show you real briefly a example database, and I'm going to go ahead and use this one, which I'll just click on and open up. You don't have to open a database from inside of Microsoft Access. If it's on desktop, you can just double-click on it, and Microsoft Access will open automatically. Now that it's open, there are a couple of menus that look kind of the same. You'll notice you have your tabs up here. Home tab looks basically the same as it does in Microsoft Excel. So we've got the sum, the filters, and a few other tabs that are familiar to you. One of the big things that's new here in Microsoft Access is it has these security warnings, so that if the data table or data set that you're opening up has macros enabled or some other functions, there was some malicious attacks that could be triggered that way. So by default, those are turned off. For anything that I give you, you can go ahead and turn those on. So if I click on Options, you'll move to Enable Content. By the way, the same thing will happen if you open up one of your own data sets after enabling menus or one or two other things. Now, these are the data tables. This one was made actually in Office 97, so it doesn't have any of the bells and whistles that the newer data tables have. And I should make a distinction between a database, which is a collection of these tables, and the data tables themselves. So the data tables are individual files of information, if you will. They're kind of akin to, in Microsoft Excel, this would be a spreadsheet within an Excel file. So each of those tabs, 1, 2, 3, these would be like 1, 2, 3. And the ones that we're going to be working with primarily is physician, patient, and schedule. Now, one of the first things I'll do when I actually grade your thing is I'm going to click on Database Tools, and I'm going to go to something called Relationships. And the reason this is so important is because it shows much everything that's happening inside your data database. So from my perspective, this is one of the most important tables in here because it shows me how everything relates to everything else. And remember, this is called a relational database. Now, the real meat of our project is contained in this data table, and then where the two come together. So for every visit that I schedule, I'll need some patient information and I'll need physician information. Now, it's kind of hard at this point to see how this all relates, but notice, for example, this is just some examples of things that you might keep track of in a patient information. So each record for every patient would have their first name, middle initial, and last name. And this is something that I learned to do a long time ago, where every field has the name of the database in the beginning. That way, when you're combining things, you're doing some other projecting, it makes it very easy to tell whether or not this is a patient first name or a physician first name, because believe me, some of these data tables, you can have 200 or 300 different data tables, each of those containing anywhere from 30 to, in some cases, 1,000 fields, and so there's overlap in all of them, and keeping track of it and understanding which one is which makes a big difference. Some other things about this one is you'll notice that many of these relationships are defined as one-to-many. What that means is that for every physician record, one physician record can have many schedules sitting here. So this is one-to-many. So one patient, let me go back up here, and you notice one patient can have many scheduled visits. Now, that's called one-to-many relationships. You can also have the one-to-one relationship where, and I don't have any examples of this here, where there's one record in this data table matches one record in another data table. You could also have a many-to-many, although I don't have any examples of that one. But what we got right now, and the ones that are most important to us, are this idea that you can have, you take the information, you put it in one time, and you can use it many times in another table, which is the idea. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, okay, so close this. And let's open my navigation pane here again, because I want to show you guys some here of what we're going to be building. So let's start with the patient information table. And when I say it looks kind of like a spreadsheet, well, it really does. In this instance, you have the each row again, similar to Microsoft Excel, represents a single record or patient. Each column represents a different field or variable, whichever way helps you think about it. So in this view, and this is the spreadsheet view, I have my patient IDs, and this patient ID is important because this is how the software actually tracks all of this information. This is what's called a primary key. It is a unique identifier for every record. That means no other record in this database or data table, can have the number 2. And this uses a field called auto number, which we'll discuss more in the next lesson. Now, all these other ones, for the most part, can be pretty much anything. You also notice that here on title, it's got a drop-down list, so I've predefined some things that can be used for data entry. And entering a new piece of data in something like this is often just a matter of point and click. And then just make up a few things. Bowling green is by default. Forgot the 2. Computers are so picky. I believe that's all I need there, but we'll just tab all the way in. By the way, birth required, so we're going to put in a birth real quick. And this is probably the most time-consuming part of this entire process for you guys. And I believe I have to assign them a physician here, so let me get all the way over to the end. These are a type of field that is binary. It's either checked on or off. All right, I missed physician somewhere. There it is. There we go. All right, that should do it. And this is a more complete example of that. Now, they don't have to be this huge. For example, in physicians, I only have just a few fields that I've actually declared and are making use of. There's a couple of them in there. And then, why do we talk about relational databases? Well, if I'm a physician, it might be nice to be able to see all of the patients assigned to Dr. Doshi here. So if I click on that little plus, I can tell it I want it to look for all the physicians assigned to Dr. Doshi. And so there you can see, there's all the physicians assigned to Dr. Doshi. And then if I click on this, there's some allergies that that patient has, which is a connection that I had made previously. From my perspective, relational database is actually one of, at least in terms of information, I think one of the biggest things to come down the pike. Now, how does all this stuff relate? Okay, well, if you have physician information, you have patient information, and you want to schedule them, you can bring them together using what are called lookups. And that's what this does. And this is a lookup. So we need a patient, so let's go look through here and we'll pick a patient. We need to make an appointment with some physician. Looks like Sam's got a couple here, but doesn't look like Ida has any so far. We're even going to assign the patient a room. So we'll put them in here. We're going to pick a date. Obviously, this is an older data set that I've been playing with, so we'll pick a date here. I'll go with something in April. And we've got to pick a time. Let's say Ida likes being with people at really early in the morning, and that's it. So now we've done it. Now, what's important is, you'll notice I didn't have to type in any of the patient information. I didn't have to type in any of the physician information. All I had to do was assign these two elements. And another trick I played on this particular data set, and we change over to a design view, is you'll notice that instead of just having an ID field, I actually made these 3 fields the unique ID. And the importance of doing that is because this way nobody can have the same room, date, and time. So I can use 3 fields to create a primary key as opposed to just 1. There's some other elements about primary keys. They're always indexed. We'll talk a little bit about indexing later. It makes searches easier to work with and things of that nature. One of the things, I don't think I have any forms created in this one, but let me just see, because I'd like to, yep, I do, okay. So here's a doctor form. Now this is the way an individual who was using the data set would look at it. They wouldn't necessarily be looking at the raw data files. This is an unid form, by the way. This is the way it looks if you just tell it to, if you go create form and you have a data table selected, it creates this as a dump. Let me see if I worked with patient any. Nope, didn't work with either one of these. So these forms wouldn't count for much if you tried to turn this in. But anyway, this would be like a screen that an individual using your application would interface with, and they would be able to make changes to the data set and things of that nature. Through this, they would never actually work with raw data, and that's so we can prevent people from doing nasty things to our data set, like screwing it up. We're at about 10 minutes now. This was a very brief introduction to Microsoft Access, and to try to give you some ideas of the power of what it is, and give you a brief description of what the data set was. Views, I should tell you that. Okay, so let me close this, and we'll start with views here real quickly. Just close all these. Yeah, that's good. Close that. Let me go back to tables. Actually, we should do it by tables-related views. Yeah, go. All right, this is actually the default view. So you'll notice for doctors, I've got both the table and the form showing now. And this is the default view in Microsoft Access. So when I have something up on Let's Work, the room table is a very simple table. All I have here is a unique identifier, the primary key. Make that full screen. The name of the room, and then I have a description. So it's 3 fields. There are multiple views that are available: pivot table views, pivot charts, designs. The two we're going to work with are data sheet and pivot and design view. And in fact, we're going to spend a lot of time in design view. And what design view is, you don't work with the data. You don't enter data, you don't add data, you don't delete rows of data. All you do in the design view is you set up the design of the table. And all you work with are the fields or the columns. And so you define those fields and columns here. So for instance, now this has the primary key on this, that's checked there. And its data type is an auto number. These are some of the different others. But the auto number just means that Microsoft Access automatically assigns them. Here's the room name. And you'll notice I have RM, that's that convention I was talking about. Down here, this stuff here, we won't work with this very much, but this is where some of the power of Microsoft Access comes in. You can set the size of the field, you can set a format to it. So for example, I can make, no matter what you type in there, it would be capitalization. I can create an input mask. As I was entering birth date, date of birth, or zip codes, you saw there were some underscores showing that comes from an input mask. If I put a caption on it, when you're in the spreadsheet view, if I'm in here, if I had a caption down here, there would be a caption showing right now. Let me see if I've got one of these. I don't. All right, I'm going to kick back to the design view, and then this is description. These are all text. These are the fields that are available. The text is on one line. I forget how many characters. It's really somewhere around 200. A memo field, I think, holds like 64,000 characters, and it can also be on multiple lines. We'll use that. We'll take advantage of that later on. A number field holds just numbers, and I mean only numbers. No commas, no apostrophes, nothing, just numbers. Date and time fields can hold both a date field, a time field, or it can hold both together. Currency, it treats every number in there as currency. Auto number, you already know what that is. The binary was the checkboxes that I showed earlier. And OLA object, that stands for object linking and embedding. We're not going to work with that, but let's say you had an employee table, you wanted to put somebody's picture in with their record. That would be an example of an OLA object. You can store hyperlinks. These are links to external data sets or databases or even web addresses. And then the lookups are where you do those relational data that we were talking about earlier. So you flip back and forth between these views. So if you're in the spreadsheet view, you can click on that, it'll switch you to the design view. If you're in the design view, it'll switch you right back to the spreadsheet view. And remember, the spreadsheet view is where you work with individual data. This is for data entry. It's not for changing any attribute of the fields, although you can do some sorts and a few other things in here. This doesn't do any data entry. This is just for editing the fields themselves and taking care of what those are going to look like. All right, I think that's about everything I want to show right now. A couple other little features in here. You have the fonts. The Create tab gives you all the things that we're going to be working with. So you can create a new table. You can create a new form. You can create some charts. We don't do any of that. Then there's also some extra points to be earned if you can create a report or a query later on. You can work with this, but this is really powerful. It's the idea to go out. You can get data from other data tables either on your computer, or you can even get them off the server. Database tools, again, a little more powerful. There'll be a lesson on menus later. We'll work with the switchboard menu. You've already seen the relationships. Acrobat, that's because I have something installed. And then within the disk set in here, these are some things that I can actually work with and change back and forth. And that's a context-sensitive menu. Same thing pops up in Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel when you're using something like that. And I believe that takes care of everything for this lesson, so I'm going to go ahead and stop here. And then we'll actually begin making our very first data set.